You know those videos, the 30-day glow plan, the 5 steps stop overthinking, the morning routine that's going to change your life. You've watched them, you've saved them, you've screenshot the steps. And you've gone to sleep thinking, okay, tomorrow is going to be different. And tomorrow is different. For a bit. Monday, you wake up super motivated and you're actually doing it. You're catching yourself mid thought and going, no, remember what the video said? And you're feeling proud of yourself for implementing it. Tuesday, still going. Some of it is starting to feel a bit forced, but you're still holding on. And then Wednesday night, that feeling, just gone. Not even gradually, just gone. You can't even remember the steps. Even if you did, it felt like advice that worked in someone else's life. And then Sunday comes around again. New video, new feeling, but same cycle. I know this well enough because I have lived it. Not for weeks, but for months. I used to have this whole ritual. Sunday night, in bed, with my phone propped up, a new self-help video. Something about confidence, productivity, glow up plan, or morning routines. And every single time I finished watching it, I'd feel like I finally cracked it. Like I got the missing piece of my puzzle. And every single time, that feeling wore off by midweek. And I kept thinking that the problem was me, that something was wrong with me. Maybe I wasn't disciplined enough, maybe I wasn't committing hard enough. But at some point, I started wondering something else. Not why can't I stick with this, but why does this always wear off? And that question changed everything. So here's what I started noticing. That Sunday night feeling, the rush of this is it, I used to think that meant the advice was good. Like if it made me feel that clear, surely it must work. And to be fair, the feeling is real. Clarity does feel good. Motivation does feel powerful. But here's what I realized. Clarity isn't change. It feels like progress, but it's not the same thing as something actually shifting. Because if the advice actually worked, I wouldn't need another video every Sunday. I wouldn't need to keep resetting my life every week. So the question went from why can't I stick with this to what is missing between clarity and change. And that's when I realized that it comes down to one thing that almost nobody talks about. To explain what I mean, let me give you a quick example. I keep procrastinating. Okay, then I find solutions to the problem, like try time blocking, put your phone in another room, try this type of technique. Maybe it works for a while, but the procrastination comes back. And then I have more hacks, more 5 steps, and more systems. But nobody, including me, was asking why this specific thing? Why this specific pattern? Not how do I stop overthinking, but why am I overthinking this specific thing? Not how do I stop procrastinating, but what about this task is making me procrastinate? That shift sounds small, but it changes everything. Because at work, I would never accept the surface answer. If something broke down, I'd follow it until I know exactly where it failed and why. I just never thought to apply that to myself until I did. So let me show you what this actually looks like. Because once I started tracing things, I realized there were actually 2 layers. There's a thing that you can see, so the pattern that keeps showing up, which I call the symptom. And then there's a thing underneath it that's actually driving it, which I call the mechanism. And they look completely different. Now let's say I take an observation, I overthink. Now, that will also be my symptom because it's just the label. And if you type that into YouTube or any other platform, you will find hundreds of content about how to stop overthinking. Specific techniques suggested to solve overthinking. For example, stuff like journaling, box breathing maybe, going for a walk, being present, meditation. And to be fair, those things do help. Sometimes even fix that overthinking at that moment. But some way or the other, it comes back. And that's also when I notice something inconvenient. I don't overthink everything. I can decide what to eat fairly quickly. I can pick an outfit. I can choose when to leave the house. So the looping only happened in specific situations. Usually when I was making a decision and I didn't know what a good answer looked like. So my brain just did not have a finish line, and that's why the looping continued. And once I saw that, It felt almost boring in how simple that was. It wasn't that I was an overthinker, it was that I had no criteria for what decided meant. And that's why the techniques work sometimes and sometimes don't. They address the symptom, but not the actual thing that was underneath, which is I did not have a criteria for what decided meant. So I tried something small. I literally wrote down 2 things. If it meets these 2 things, then it's a yes. And just like that, the looping stopped. And that's when I started to see this pattern everywhere. The thing that shows up, I overthink, is the symptom. But the thing underneath, I don't know what a good answer or a decision looks like, is the mechanism. And the mechanism is actually what needs fixing. They need completely different approaches. The next natural question is, how do you find the mechanism? Because it's easy to say, look underneath. That sounds nice. But how do you actually do it? For me, it ended up being something pretty simple. I started asking myself 3 questions, and I was inspired from my own thinking, but applied in a different context. For example, work, because that is literally how I solve problems at work. I trace the issue step by step until I know what went wrong and why and where. So we apply the same idea here. First, when does this actually happen? Not I overthink all the time. Be specific. Is it when your manager asks you for an opinion and you don't know what a good answer looks like? Is it when you have to send a risky message? Or maybe is it when you have to commit to something long term? Second, where does it break? What happens in the exact moment things go wrong? Do you freeze? Do you start rehearsing the perfect answer in your head? Do you say something even though you don't fully agree with it? Or do you just not say anything at all? And then the third question, and this is usually the uncomfortable one. What's actually happening right there? Why does it break at that specific point? Is it that you're scared of being wrong? Is it that you're scared of looking stupid in front of people? Or is it that you don't trust your own opinion unless and until someone confirms it for you? For me, in situations like that, the honest answer looks something like, I'm scared of being wrong in front of people. I think if I say something stupid, they will lose respect for me. Now that is the mechanism. Notice how different that is from I overthink. That is vague. And the other, the mechanism, is specific. And this we can work with. Now, let me actually walk you through this from start to finish so you can properly see how it starts from noticing the symptom to finding the mechanism. Let's pick something that most of us deal with. For example, I scroll on my phone when I have something important to do. Sit down with a deadline or a task you genuinely want to do, and suddenly you're 40 minutes deep in your phone. And sure, the surface advice is always the same. Put your phone in another room, screen time limits, app blockers, delete social media. Maybe it works for a day, but it comes back. Or you just find a new distraction. So instead of fighting the phone, let's trace what happens right before the phone. So question 1, when does this actually happen? Because it's not all the time. When does this become a problem? For me, it was specifically when I sat down to work on something important. Maybe a project I cared about, maybe an email I had to send. That's when the phone would appear in my hand like magic. My phone becomes a problem before I do something that actually matters to me. Question 2, where does it break? What's the exact moment it goes wrong? I'd open the document and within seconds, I'd feel this heaviness, this resistance. And before I even registered the resistance, I was on my phone. So the break point isn't the phone. It was whatever that heaviness or that resistance feeling that occurred before the phone. And question 3, what's actually going on there? The uncomfortable question. When I sat with it honestly, the answer was something like, I'm scared the thing I make won't be good enough. And if I don't start, I can't fail. Now that is the mechanism. Look at the distance between where we started, so the symptom, and where we ended up, the mechanism. We started at, I scroll too much when I have something important to do. And we ended at, I'm scared of not being good enough at something I care about. That doesn't even sound like the same problem, right? But one is sitting right underneath the other. And once you see it, you can work on the real thing. Maybe, for example, it would be just starting smaller. Or maybe it's accepting that the first version will be a little bit rough. Or maybe it's figuring out where that fear even comes from. But at least now you're working on the right thing. The thing we were trying to fix isn't the real problem. We were trying to manage the surface, the symptom. But the symptom isn't running the show. So if you zoom out, this whole video comes down to something pretty simple. Most advice treats what's showing up, so the symptom. Underneath every symptom there is something that drives it, which is the mechanism. And unless you change that, the symptom or the surface is just gonna keep showing up. No matter how many videos you watch, no matter how much content you consume. So, concretely, what are you walking away with? First, you can see the difference between a symptom and a mechanism. And once you see it, you really can't unsee it. And you'll notice this everywhere. Second, you've got 3 questions to find out what the mechanism is. When does it happen? Where does it go wrong? And what's actually happening there? And third, if you try this once, you will find the difference between understanding and motivation. And guess what? Understanding doesn't fade away by Wednesday. And that brings us to the end of the video. Before you leave, I want you to try this. Think about one thing that keeps coming back. Just one pattern. Thing where you've tried the advice and it doesn't stick. Instead of trying to fix it, just ask yourself the 3 questions. When does it happen? So not all the time, but specifically, where does it break? What's going on in the exact moment that things go sideways? And what's actually happening there? What's the real thing underneath it? You don't have to solve it. You don't have to do anything with it just yet. Just see if the answer you get is different from the story that you've been telling all along. Because usually it is. At least it was like that for me. That difference, that's the part that doesn't fade away by midweek. If you found something, drop in the comments. I would genuinely love to know. And also, once you say it out loud, it stops being a feeling and becomes something you can actually work with. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching. I'm Shrey. If you like this, make sure to hit subscribe because I've got new videos coming soon. And I would love to have you here. I'll see you in the next one.